Most people think the Kawasaki W2 2026 is just Kawasaki playing dress-up again. Another retro bike, another nostalgia story, another heritage badge slapped on a modern frame. But after spending time really digging into it, I don't think that's the full story at all. What surprised me was how intentional this bike feels. Not loud, not desperate, almost quiet in its confidence. And that alone makes it interesting in a market that keeps shouting for attention. I noticed this the moment I compared the W2 to bikes like the Z650RS and even the W800. On paper, the W2 looks like it should sit somewhere in between. In reality, it feels like Kawasaki is aiming at a different kind of rider altogether. The W2 doesn't seem built to impress you in the first 5 minutes. It's built to make sense after a few months. That's a rare thing now. Most people miss this, but the W2 isn't trying to be a beginner bike or a weekend cafe toy. The proportions, the stance, even the way the engine is tuned suggests something more everyday, something lived in. I kept thinking about who this bike is really for. And honestly, it's probably not the rider chasing top speed numbers or spec sheet bragging rights. It's for someone who cares how a bike feels at 45 miles per hour, not 95. That's a mindset shift. When I looked at the engine approach, what stood out wasn't power, but restraint. Kawasaki could have easily pushed more performance here. They didn't. That tells me they're prioritizing smoothness, predictability, and character over excitement. And that's not a weakness, it's a choice. A lot of modern bikes feel like they're constantly asking you to ride harder. The W2 feels like it's asking you to ride longer. There's a difference. One mistake people are already making is comparing the W2 directly to the Royal Enfield 650 Twins. I get why. Similar retro vibes, similar displacement range, similar price conversations. But the intention feels different. The Enfields feel proudly old school, almost stubbornly so. The W2 feels like Kawasaki asking, how do we keep the soul but remove the inconvenience? Things like throttle response, heat management, and overall refinement matter more than people admit, and Kawasaki has always been good at making bikes that disappear underneath you while you ride. That's a big deal for daily use. Here's a practical takeaway most reviews won't tell you. If you plan to ride this bike often, not occasionally, the W2 might age better than flashier alternatives. Comfort, balance, and engine smoothness matter more after 10,000 miles than styling drama. I also noticed something interesting about the design. It's retro, yes, but it's not trying too hard to look old. The lines are clean, the finishes are controlled, nothing feels artificially aged. That restraint is confidence again. Some riders might call it boring. I think boring is underrated. Boring usually means reliable, predictable, and easy to live with, and those traits quietly build attachment over time. Another misconception is that the W2 is too calm to be fun. I don't buy that. Fun doesn't always mean adrenaline. Sometimes fun is a bike that does exactly what you expect every single time. There's a certain satisfaction in that. When I imagine riding the W2, I don't picture canyon racing or track days. I picture early morning rides, city streets before traffic wakes up, and long back roads where speed limits actually matter. That's not accidental. That's design alignment. Compared to something like the Z650RS, the W2 feels less sporty but more honest. The Z wants to remind you it comes from a performance lineage. The W2 doesn't need to remind you of anything. It just exists. And that's where I think Kawasaki got clever. In a world full of bikes trying to prove something, the W2 doesn't seem insecure at all. One thing I do wonder about is how riders will react to the lack of aggressive tech. No flashy screens, no riding modes overload. And honestly, I think that's the point. Technology fatigue is real. The W2 feels like a bike that lets you breathe, ride, think, disconnect a little. And for a lot of riders right now, that's more appealing than another feature list. Here's another practical insight. If you're the kind of rider who keeps bikes for years, not seasons, the W2 makes more sense than it first appears. Trends age quickly. Simple machines age slowly. That's something most buyers forget when they're standing in a showroom. I also keep coming back to how this bike fits into Kawasaki's lineup. It doesn't compete internally. It fills a gap, a calm, mature gap. It's not a bike you buy to impress strangers. It's a bike you buy for yourself. And maybe that's why it won't explode on social media. Quiet bikes rarely do, but they often end up with the most loyal owners. If there's one risk I see is perception. If riders expect excitement, they might miss the depth. The W2 requires patience, and patience isn't common in today's motorcycle culture. But for the right rider, that patience gets rewarded. In the end, my personal take is this. The Kawasaki W2 2026 isn't trying to win arguments. It's trying to earn trust. And that makes it more interesting to me than bikes that scream for attention and fade after the honeymoon phase. Some bikes shout, some bikes whisper. The W2 feels like a whisper worth listening to.